Thank you very much. I've got one of these fancy mics so I can jump around the scene. I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me. It's a bit intimidating to speak in front of this audience. I'm not a social scientist. I'm not a researcher in ethical issues. I'm not a researcher in gender issues. So who am I to talk to you about gender issues, basically? I've been asked by the organizers to talk about these issues in the context, of course, of our own experience at the European Science Foundation, so from the ESF's perspective. My own background, just for the record, is planetology, which is a field infested by males. So actually, you'll see some statistics. I think this is falling. So if you don't hear me, I can shout. Yes, so moving ahead, and before I jump into the issue, some of you might not know about the European Science Foundation, and since the ESF has changed tremendously in the past 5 years, I just want to give you a very short highlight on the recent developments and our new missions. So basically, those of you who were acquainted with ESF in the past were probably funded through research programs, networks, conferences, etc. This is gone. This mission is gone. There's been a strategic realignment of member organizations who decided that this function would cease. ESF should have been extinguished, but we were able to convince the governance that there was value in actually using the expertise in terms of network management, program evaluation, peer review, etc., not go down the drain, but be used for the community and for the science stakeholders as a series of services. So that's what we're doing now. So as of last year, we've begun developing under the name Science Connect, the new division of the European Science Foundation, these new activities that I will shortly explain. The aim remains to promote, of course, and this is also in this context that I'm talking here, to promote scientific developments in as ethical way as possible through collaborative actions, and mainly by supporting decision makers in science and providing the right metrics, the right indicators. This is where we stand, management procedures. We've managed 2,000 programs and networks in 30 countries, and a lot of, and this is actually key, I will talk a lot about this, the network of scientists and experts. This is the database, if you want. We have a community of experts, which is much smaller, but dedicated people who can respond on a very short notice. We work with a number of partners and customers, both in the public and private sectors. I won't dwell on that. But this is the services that we are delivering to the community. So peer review, as mentioned in the introduction, evaluation in the sense that peer review is basically what we do when people, institutions ask us to rank research proposals, research grants, and evaluation is more when we ask to assess, for instance, a research system in a given country or an institution or a program or series of programs. Project management, program management, we do a lot of that for the community, a lot of EU projects, but not only. Not as the driving force, if you want, not as the initiator of the proposal, but responding to the community's requests in terms of needs to coordinate or supervise or help proposals. Career tracking I will talk about. And we also host, ESF has been hosting a number of expert boards and committees in the past, 6 of them, 3 currently, that I will briefly address. Career tracking, just for to highlight the fact that in the case of gender issues, this is going to be relevant in my talk. We are trying to convince a number of key decision makers in Europe that there is value in having a European career tracking platform over Europe. This does not exist. It exists at national, sometimes local, university level. EUA has a lot of information about that, of course, but it does not exist as a tool for European decision makers, for instance. These expert boards and committees that I've discussed, we have 3 currently in areas that are, again, very much dominated by male scientists. Radio astronomy, 8% female in the membership in the committee. Nuclear physics, 11%. The one that fares the best is actually space sciences, which I've started by saying that it was not very good, but actually it's a bit better than the other. 36% female. So I will talk about these context considerations of gender equality, again, very modestly, by showing you data about what we have in our community of experts within our services, and also highlight a little bit what we found by doing a pilot project in career tracking. So where this comes from is basically from our old life as a member, an organization grouping 80-member organization in 30 countries. And we've published a lot of reports about that, programmatic report, but also a number of, let's say, policy papers, position papers, which I have highlighted here, career tracking of doctorate holders, mobility of researchers. This is not readable, but basically a survey analysis report on peer review practices, and I will talk about that. The European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity, which I want to highlight here. This was published, I believe, in 2011 with ALEA, the All European Academies, and there's a lot of gender-related issues in that. Peer review guide, which has become the sort of Bible in terms of peer review, which was elaborated through a member organization forum with our member organizations, fostering research integrity. So I've actually extracted and highlighted some recommendations from those reports, and I'm going now to show a few of these to you, of course not everything, where this relates to gender. So in terms of responsible, we heard about responsible research and innovation just now, but in terms of responsible research procedures and code of conduct, this is a very generic statement, but this is something that sort of frames our intervention in our program. Yeah, okay. Once you have said that, fine. Sensitivity to age, gender, etc. should be evinced. I've highlighted in green the words that seem to me to be particularly important in the context of these talks here. In terms of peer review, I will spend 2 or 3 slides on that. They went a bit further in this report, saying that funding organizations and reviewers, which for the new ESF is important because we do a lot of that, should not discriminate in any way on the basis of gender, etc., and other factors that you can see listed here. And this goes a bit further in the sense that it actually targets the funders and the review panels to have specific measures to improve the issue of gender balance. Conscious and explicit attention, we're going a step further here, must be paid to ensuring gender balance for both remote and panel reviewers, so people who evaluate at a distance and people who sit in physical panels, as well as in chairing panels. According blah, 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 it is recommended that a gender ratio of at least 40% of women to men should be attained, meaning that in these panels, and in the composition of this database of reviewers, there should be around 40% as a minimum, of course. In the case of proposals having an equal rank, it may be legitimate for the funding body, and here we're not talking about so much the reviewers, but the people who are getting funded, to differentiate proposals where necessary using, previously agreed methods. Here, diversity issues, e.g. gender, might be taken into account. So actually, the notion here is that you can do something very forcibly, if need be, to ensure that the bad situation that you're facing is actually corrected. Now we switch to another area, competitive European research area. Core prerequisites for realizing a successful and competitive era include a critical mass of skilled researchers and diversity of research group, including gender diversity, also in senior positions and selections committee. To me, this is absolutely vital. Things will probably not change by themselves. Once you have female scientists reaching these positions of power, they may be able then to influence the further selection. Careers, mobility, linked to scientific quality. We've heard that already. This was mentioned when I arrived in the talk that I was listening to. I understand that it was mentioned this morning. Sorry for missing the session. Today, women outnumber men at graduate level, represent around 50% or even more at PhD level, but only around 20% at professor level, grade A level. So the recommendation here was that incentives should ensure proper and balanced gender recruitment to research positions and committees, including leading researcher positions. Here we address scientific quality. in addition to making better use of the quantitative research potential in both genders, this quality will also contribute to greater scientific quality and innovation through greater gender diversity in research groups, manifested by diversity of ideas and cognitive strategies. So the notion, again, that female researchers can bring a different perspective to these fora and these discussions, which I think is, I don't have data about that, but I believe this might be considered as very important. And then the issue that we heard already, my head must be too large for this mic. It continuously falls off. Individual non-standard career paths affected by changes or interruptions due to professional mobility and family reasons should be considered when selecting experts. I will talk about this further in my talk. So this notion that was mentioned already, not only of glass ceiling, but of maternal wall is also something that was addressed by these reports and the recommendations therefrom. This is long, talks about mobility. Thank you very much. Is the other one turned off? How is that? Okay, good. Doctorate holders are highly geographically mobile for career and knowledge advancement purposes. Mobility has benefits and costs at national, institutional, and individual levels. While awareness of the benefits is widespread, the pressure to be geographically mobile can be difficult for those who have family or caring responsibilities. And there was a strange notion that was introduced in this report about virtual mobility, so trying to facilitate things where actually the concept, the notion of virtual mobility is strange to me, but basically enabling short-term leaves or things like that, or even remote cooperation between teams to facilitate this particular problem. Doctorate sponsoring institutions need to recognize this in their funding model. So again, the notion that it's not just, you cannot stop at making very generic and broad recommendations, but you need to find the incentives and the perhaps the constraining measures to facilitate that. I probably will skip this one. Tension has been identified at various levels, and in particular between career work that is guided by a set of formal criteria and engagement work which is not recognized sufficiently by existing academic reward systems. This is also seen as involving important gender issues. I don't have particular comments on that one. I just thought I would flash it up because it talks about various aspects of academic careers versus other aspects in the career. Some data about specifically peer review, and this was at the time where we were producing the peer review guides, so trying to understand a little bit better what would be the best practices in this area. So there was a survey of organizations who all have database of reviewers, and they were asked to basically first tell us how many female researchers were in their database and how they view themselves as being either effective or not in attracting female researchers to those databases. So as you can see here, 53% of these participating organizations indicated that only 25% or less of the entries in the database were female reviewers. And so they were, in practice, they were generally not very satisfied with that level of achievement. As you can see here, 6 in the scale is actually bad, 1 is excellent, and most were around here. What I found significant here, and I don't know the answer, is the number of don't know, basically. Don't know how many female reviewers in their database, 26%, okay. And don't know whether they were considered efficient or not, 36%. So that's kind of interesting. Career tracking. I said I would talk about career tracking. So we did a first pilot study. This is might be considered a bit biased because very few number of institutions participated to that, universities and private foundations as well, who were funding postdoc level researchers. And basically we did a survey about various aspects using statistical tools and analyzing the mobility linkage in terms of geography, industry. And the idea was basically to understand better what the PhD and postdoc people were doing as a career, whether they were staying in academia, going to industry, doing something else, etc. So we analyzed these geographic mobility drivers. Of course, analysis of trends by age, experience, and gender were considered there. Headlight findings concerning gender dimensions. There were many of those, of course. You can, I see that the reports I've put outside have gone now, but you can find them on our website, of course. And I think this has been already highlighted in the discussion, equivalent for men of women, doctoral completion times, share of tenured posts, share of senior research posts, but of course, men and women are clustered in different traditional research sectors, men more in physical sciences, computers and engineering, women in social life sciences. So from that standpoint, what we are seeing here on a very small sample of organization is actually reflecting what we've heard already. So this is more or less echoing what we see. Pay attention here to this part here, life sciences, because I will show something that is different in a moment. Salary levels, of course, significantly higher in the sectors males are concentrated in. And I don't mean to say, of course, it's normal, should be this way, but as we expect. Women who work in male-dominated research sectors still earn lower salaries than men. So this is also something that we find through the surveys in this pilot study about career tracking. We've actually started 2-3 months ago a second pilot study with 11 private foundations and universities and research institutions. The results will be published in September. The report will be available through our website. So I'm looking forward to the data here, seeing whether this is confirmed, whether there's been any evolution 3 or 4 years after the... Some other headlight findings, just concentrating on the first 2 lines. Women earn less, but tend, at least on this sample, to win more research prizes and to be more active in participating to conferences. Men being more active in terms of publications. So this was what we've been working under, if you want, as a kind of framework, because we try to apply this recommendation through our own instruments, through our own services, and to our own practices internally. So at ESF, what are we doing? Well, first of all, I want to highlight the fact that we were recognized in 2011 by this logo here, the HR Excellence in Research stamp logo, which means that we're working within the best practice guidelines of the European Charter of Researchers and Code of Conduct for the recruitment of researchers. So we have the right to display this logo on our website. But part of the process, more interestingly, involves the setting up in November 2014 of an internal code of conduct, which is governing all our internal policies and practices despite the evolution of ESF. So we've kept all these issues. For instance, recruitment policies, guarantees impartiality through selection, including, of course, gender issues and salary levels, by competence, by evidence-based qualification, through annual performance management process, etc. We work essentially by having a community of experts. So extracted from this database of hundreds of thousands of researchers who are people who are regularly renewed and participated in several colleges. We have 3 colleges, the review panel members, so sort of more senior people who sit in, I believe, 6 different disciplinary review panels, are appointed for 1.5 years, and they physically meet to look at remote evaluation and to basically rank a series of proposals. So this is the first college. This is about 200 people, and they're, as I said, regularly renewed. 150 plus, sorry. The College of Expert Reviewers, currently this number is outdated. It's, oops, sorry. How do I get back here? Okay. This was a month ago. This is actually 2,500 now. And basically these people evaluate proposals at a distance and send us their evaluation, which are further looked at by the review panel. So we are talking about basically 3,000 people currently, with the aim being to increase it to that number. So this is bread and butter, if you want. These are the people whom we rely on to perform the peer review and evaluation. And we have a number of data on these people. I will not talk about the last college, which is a very small college of young postdoc people who help us identify reviewers. You remember that recommendation about 40% of a ratio of women to men in panels, basically, and committees. How are we faring at ESF in our community of experts? Well, not very good, I must say. We're still stuck, at least within the current community, at about 22–23% of female reviewers versus, more than 3/4 of men. This is the situation today. It's split between, this is the whole community. These are the external reviewers. These are the review panel members. This is, of course, less statistically significant because the count is smaller. But basically, we see that we're not faring much better than 22%, which is still completely insufficient. I don't know how readable that is. I'll try to extract a few findings from that. This is the same picture, but by disciplinary area. And here again, I think you're probably not surprised. You've seen that in many different presentations. This clustering of males or females in various sectors is seen here in our community of experts. So from that standpoint, what I heard this afternoon more or less echoes what is being captured here. Humanities, this is basically the only area where we have more female than males in our community of experts, 58%. Oh, by the way, a very important element. Has anybody seen that? No? Females are blue. Males are orange. Okay. Social sciences, a third. So not as good as here. But, and of course, the rest, you would expect that. Physical sciences, terrible, 7%. Environment, 16, that's more surprising. It probably means our database is still a bit skewed or biased. Life sciences, 20%, well, we know that women tend to be more present in these areas. So, some confirmation of the general trend here, but not completely the same, which actually gives me food for thought in how I want to change that and improve that. And of course, yeah, the question is, are these biases that we see in the data, are these purely reflecting the traditional discipline gender bias, or is there something else in our database that is inherently wrong or good? That I don't know, but I intend to find out. What can we do, what can I do to change that? Of course, the sort of ethical framework we are operating under, the code of conduct that I mentioned, both the European Commission and the internal one, is going to be our guidelines for the future. I've heard things since I arrived about, let's say, a bettering of the situation over the years, a cultural change, things like that, which I believe are probably partly true. But I don't think that this is enough. I don't think these things work. If you don't force things out, they don't happen. So with the risk of making enemies in a room, I think that if you don't have a proactive approach, if you don't exert positive discrimination on this issue, you will not improve drastically the situation. So what do I have to do as a CEO of this organization and more broadly as part of the scientific community to improve the situation regarding gender bias in the review panel members' composition, in the College of Reviewers? I have started to, and I intend to continue applying these guidelines in a very strict and forceful way towards the development, continuation of that database, so by providing strict guidelines to the science officers and research associates who are constituting and building that database. Of course, acknowledging and communicating on that policy and approach through our tools, website, social media, conferences here, etc. But there are other things, and some of our committees have started implementing those. We are doing that in the expert committees that I mentioned, at least in one of them, not all three currently. And we are working on doing that for the review panels themselves. So basically, specific incentives, specific support for participation of female scientists, 2 panels or 2 committees. We have the case recently of childcare expenses to allow members to participate to meetings abroad and things like that, which are being paid and supported by the ESF and by the committees themselves. So these are the type of things that I believe are proactive, and my message here is really I need to do something to change. I can't just let cultural evolution play its role. I was discussing 3 days ago with a colleague, a female scientist, colleague of mine, who has had, I think still has responsibilities in a research entity in Flanders, and her policy was very simple in terms of grants, in terms of allocating money. No women, no money. I have a very serious issue at ESF. My color scheme is all screwed up here. Now the males are blue for some reason, except here where they're orange. So this is the ESF staff. I'm surrounded by female scientists and female administrators. So in terms of staff, the situation is a bit different. It's not linked to the activities, to the occupation. Even in the scientific area, we still have a number of, you know that, right? You've been there. So I just wanted to end by this levity on the situation at ESF. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Worms. It was very nice to be able to see a formal presentation of the new ESF. Do we have any questions? Yes, up at the front. The mic is coming, just a second. And if you could please state your name and affiliation. Thanks.
My name is Maria Mantini Satta, senior gender expert of Centro Studi Progetto Donne e Diversity Management in Bologna, Italy. Can I suggest a little change of your wording? In the sense that you showed in different situations where women are more than men. So I just would suggest that you use that we need a gender balance of at least 40-60. And instead of we want 40% of women. I mean, just to always underline that the women is the problem. Yeah. I think it would be better just to say we want a gender balance of 40-60 as a minimum, as the European Commission has suggested. Thank you.
This is very valid remark, and I fully agree with you. I was only highlighting what was a recommendation from a member organization forum. This is not my position that composition of review panel should be 40%. Your formulation is obviously much better.
Okay, we have another question. And if you wouldn't mind, I know you asked a question early on, but if you could say again, sorry, the lady right at the front, that if you could say your name and affiliation again for the recording.
Vesselina Rajeva, World Economic Forum. I'm just wondering, on your slide where you had your pool of different populations of subject specialists, is that at all pegged to existing balances in the industry? Because something like, for example, 20% engineers, female engineers could be representative of an industry, of the pool of already existing engineering faculty, whereas, I don't know, 40 or 30 of social scientists might be a bit different.
Sorry, I missed actually the question. You mentioned something about industry which I failed to capture.
So have you compared your pools of different specialists in the database to the pools of specialists out there in the academic fields?
No, the short answer is no, and you're right. I mean, this is just showing a few data points that should, I mean, again, we need researchers who are working in that area to help us there, but we need to compare that with other elements elsewhere. Otherwise, it's just not very interesting.
There's a question over there for the lady who doesn't drink beer, although she's Irish. Sorry,
I don't answer questions from Irish.
This morning she told us about this. I don't recall your name. Would you mind repeating your name and affiliation, please?
Ita Richardson from the University of Limerick in Ireland. So I want to commend you on this, because I absolutely think targets are the only way to go, to be quite honest, because as long as people can get the excuse of we can't find the women, then they won't look for the women. I suppose my question kind of relates again to the same chart where you had broken down all your different groupings. And what I was wondering was, if somebody wanted to, based on the database, could they actually get the 40%? So are there enough names of women in there under engineering that would give the 40%? And I suppose it's a little bit like was mentioned earlier this morning, that in the military school, they said you must do rather than it being a recommendation. So I suppose I really think that we have to get to the point of you must do.
Yes. Thank you for the kind words, first of all. The answer to your question is no. I don't think the sample is statistically or numerically sufficient to allow us to do that. Hence the objectives that I've shown of 12,000 instead of 2,000 to 3,000 currently people, where then you will be able. But apart from this community of experts, I want to highlight the fact that when we have science officers working on a given peer review campaign, trying to identify and match reviewers with proposals, we use, of course, primarily the community of experts. But where we cannot find the expertise therein, then we go to the broader, first our database, then intranet, then Scopus, then whatever, the broader world, scientific world out there, and try to identify the experts. So we might then be able, again, through a sort of constrained approach, to find the more female reviewers in those other data sources.
I'm curious, Rita Andrews at the very start of the day mentioned she'd been in events so Rita Andrews is the lady who coordinated this event, and she mentioned that in the years of event coordination, she has noticed that asking men to come and talk is a piece of cake. They say yes or they say no, but they mostly say yes. Asking women to come and talk, she has to, ask them 6 or 7 times because they ask loads of questions, they're not quite sure, they're quite anxious. Do you have the same experience with reviewers? Do you feel that women reviewers are maybe more reluctant than men, and that could maybe explain the difference? Or is it really purely that you've just not been that great at having the gender balance?
It's a bit of both, but as far as I can tell from the experience, I don't have that, although, of course, we're not asking these people to come and talk. As you said, they have to either evaluate proposals from home, which is okay, or sit in review panels.
But both is a big commitment of time.
Yes, it is a big commitment of time, and I have not seen that. I don't have the evidence to tell you that, yes, we do have a problem there. I don't think so currently. Where we still have a problem is identifying the chairs of these review panels, not per se, but to find female chairs rather than male chairs.
Right. Chris, do I have time for one last question? Yes, I do. So it'll be the lady right here then. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ella Ghosh. I work in the Norwegian committee that works with gender balance and ethnic diversity at national level on behalf of the Ministry of Education. 2 things. The burden of representation. Women scientists have multiple tasks, and obviously that causes some hesitation, not so much shyness as being expected to fill that gender gap in every national context as well. The question is, as well, we see sometimes when people decide there's something wrong with the situation and decide not to accept that there is imbalance, they go out and actively use resources to train people or to change something about the system so as to give, it gives them points somehow, it increases their status, they gain some other benefit. Have you evaluated either using training or incentives or other forms of positive action to change the situation?
Training, no, but that's an interesting concept. Incentives, I mentioned only one, which is to try to fight that your first point, or the reasons linked to your first point, which were that female scientists would have other occupations that would make them hesitant to accept. Here, if it's, for instance, childcare or things that are related to that, then compensation should exist and exists at our foundation. So this is one example. I am sure that we have not covered the breadth or the broad spectrum of things that we could do. But, I mean, yeah, suggestions or ideas in this context would be immensely useful.
Thank you. Can I please have a round of applause to thank Dr. Jean-Claude Worms?